welcome back to Hemel Vineyard Church. I am here with the wonderful Laura this morning.
Hello.
Laura, we're really glad to have you with us because we are working through the next section of this amazing book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And we have been going through this now for a number of months. We do a little bit and then have a bit of time off and do some other things and come back to it. And we are looking at some practices of Jesus that can help us as we seek to unhurry our lives as we apprentice to Jesus. And so we, at the moment, we are looking at this idea of simplicity. And we've looked at a couple of different aspects of that, simplicity of speech, simplicity of clothing. And last week, Kev and Prit introduced us to this whole idea of simplicity of stuff. Now, this is a really quite a big area, and we're going to hear from Laura in a minute, who's got a really great experience of this. But because it's a really big area, we thought we'd spend another week and come back and just sort of talk about it again, simplicity of stuff. So welcome to the journey if you're just joining us, and if you've been here along, I hope this helps you on the next steps as you walk with Jesus in your life. So Laura, you have got a really unique experience and perspective on simplicity of stuff. So if you want to just tell us a bit of your experience, that would be great.
Okay. Right, so in short, I guess I was going through a circumstance that anybody sadly could go through that actually wasn't a very nice thing to experience, but was cloaked in so much blessing, such as experiencing simplicity, just for an example of what we're talking about. I sadly lost my home and I left my job in teaching at the same time. And because of that, because of losing my home, we had so much stuff that was a great opportunity to get rid of. Lots of big bits of furniture, the usual things you get rid of when you're moving. And then obviously we had to get rid of more and more and more because we went away to Greece for 8 months. So we just took a small kind of amount of luggage with us. The time in Greece was beautiful because it was very much like being on holiday. So you just have, you know, your swimming things, a few shorts and t-shirts, and because you're living in a different country, you're very excited about that. So you don't miss stuff in that situation. It wasn't until we came back to the UK, and my son and I are now living with my mum, and we have been here for a couple of years, that you start to realise the lack of stuff that you have by comparison of other people, and that those social pressures start to kind of eat in. So it was through that process that I had to learn the blessings of living in a simple way, constantly be focused and ask God to help me focus on the things that we had that were really important, such as the simplest things like warmth and shelter and food and clothes to wear, and living in a circumstance where you don't have really a great deal more than that. It does nothing but force you to see the blessing of your situation. So actually, even though, you know, you might hear that and think, oh my gosh, that sounds awful, you lost your home and how bad, I was actually set free through the difficulty. And it reminds me of, you know, when you're in the furnace, effectively, that's when the chains are broken. So when you're going through something really difficult, that's when the chains are loosened, the bondage is loosened. So for me, through all that difficulty, I've been given the gift of really understanding simplicity and simple living. And it has definitely brought me much, much closer to God through the process. So it's been a huge blessing.
So thank you. So that's, you kind of were really kind of forced into this simplicity of stuff and having to go to everything. So tell us a little bit about the process that you had to go through to kind of to do that, because I know, you know, for a lot of us, we've been looking at simplicity and, you know, perhaps being advised by John Mark Comer to like pick a room, or I tried to go for like a drawer at a time, you know, and what are you going to keep? What are you going to give away? What are you going to sell? What are you going to put in the bin? What's your kind of, you know, hold on to it for a bit longer pile kind of thing. And that can seem really daunting. So what was it like for you to have to do that with everything?
Terrifying. It was terrifying. It was hard. It was such an emotional process, because I was attached to everything, not just the normal sentimental things such as, you know, baby clothes of Indies or books that we used to read together. Everything had an emotional or sentimental value to it. And you don't realise that until you're getting ready for something. And you don't realise the hold that materialistic stuff has on you until you're trying to part with it. So it was really interesting from a psychological perspective that I would convince myself that some kind of, I don't know, coaster that an old aunt 3 times removed had given me had huge value in my life, because I felt guilty for getting rid of it because somebody gave it to me with love. And you'll always convince yourself that there's a reason to keep something, either that somebody gave it to you and you feel bad giving it away, or because you bought it in full intentions of using this item at some point in your life. And I think that's why that I think we've masked over that the book's called The Ruthless Elimination. Right? Because it's ruthless. You have to be ruthless, and it feels ruthless. So it's really tough, and I don't know if this is going to help, and it may not, but it's like pulling teeth in a sense, that you've got awful toothache and it's horrible, and yanking it out makes it feel better. So it is quite, my advice would be almost ripping it off like a band-aid. Like, it's something that once you do it, you feel so liberated, you feel so free. I'm not saying to anybody just go and throw away everything you own and have nothing left, not at all, but it definitely made me really aware of my attachment to things that where there shouldn't really be an attachment, how much I relied on my well-being and my confidence and my self-esteem for material items, rather than like picking up my Bible, listening to a podcast, worshipping, stuff that would feed me. I was, as we all can sometimes, I had too much of an unhealthy attachment to stuff.
That's really interesting, because I think we can do that thing of like, I know I went through my wardrobe a couple of weeks ago because we did simplicity of clothing, and I didn't have time to do John Mark's thing of like getting everything out and sorting and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to do an initial pull on like stuff I haven't worn for a while and put that in a bag for charity shop. And I put it in, and then James came in and he was like, oh, are you getting rid of that jumper? And he had an emotional attachment to something. And I was like, that's really funny. And I think you're right. I think we don't realise, do we, the kind of store that we put in stuff around us. So just John Mark Comer says in his book, so what should we do then? Like, if we're kind of becoming aware of the fact that we have all this stuff and it's probably not necessarily healthy for us, should we go back to a hole in the backyard as our toilet, give up running water, burn our debit cards? No, that wouldn't fix the problem. Because the problem isn't the stuff. And I think this is really interesting. It's that, one, we put no limit on stuff because of our insatiable human desire for more. And I know that we've talked about that the last couple of weeks. And then second, that we think we need all sorts of things to be happy, when actually we need very few. And so it's not that we're saying to everybody, you've got too much stuff, you need to get rid of it all. But that we think we need so much, and so we have this desire for more all the time. And yet Jesus is saying the desire for more is not a God desire. And also, you just don't need it all, which is really fascinating, isn't it? Because I think we probably purchase a lot of things that we think that we need. But then if you went back 6 months later and went, did I really need that? It could be slightly different. So, yeah. And I think it was great last week, Kev was talking about, can we borrow stuff from other people and then give it back again so that we can enjoy it, but without actually owning it. So I think there's loads of really great stuff there, Laura. Thank you for that. And I know you sort of touched on it a little bit, but having to live very simply now. So you basically sort of have one room, don't you? You and Indy together.
Yeah.
And you have access to the rest of your mum's house, obviously, but your space for your stuff is one room. And that must be very challenging, she says, looking around her house. So what do you feel have been the effects for you of kind of, now you've been doing sort of living in this way for a couple of years? Do you see positive effects? Do you see the difference in yourself or in other parts of your life?
Massive positive effects. For example, I just don't buy as much stuff now. I mean, not that I can afford to anyway. I don't think any of us can really when we ask ourselves that question. But when you know you can't buy stuff, or there's no point to buy it because there's nowhere to put it, you don't realise how much you fall into the trap of getting stuff you don't need. And how much, as you said, Cathryn, like, we are born into a world where from children there are adverts telling us buy this and get this and go here and have this car, and we're kind of almost led to believe that to show that you're successful, or to show that you are worthy, or to show that you are, look how much I've achieved, you will own a certain amount of things, you will have a nice car, to say, look what I've accomplished. You'll have lots of nice clothes to show, look at the kind of job I do, I have to wear nice clothes. You'll have lots of stuff. It's a show of wealth. It's peacocking effectively, right?
That's what the world tells us to do, isn't it?
Exactly. And we get so fed into that. And if we don't have certain things, we feel less than. If we can't give our children certain things, we feel less than. But when that's removed from you and you don't have the choice, you realize that wealth is found in so many other ways, as you know, Jesus tells us, like, and also not to focus on our treasure here, focus on our treasure in heaven. So what I try and talk to, you know, Indy about a lot is, it's not about what we have, it's about what we do with what we have. And also, does what we have own us, or do we own those things, right? Because the more things we have, the more stressful it becomes. The more items we have, the more we have to clean, the more we have to tidy, the more we have to feel responsible for. Whereas if I've only got one bookshelf, which is really heartbreaking, because I love books, and I used to have a lot of books, but now I keep a few on there. And same for Indy. He has we've got a lovely bunk bed with all these storage stairs. He has lots of books in there, and we every now and then pull them out and keep them on rotation. Right, what ones do you want to read now? Let's put the ones up there that you want to read. The thing that's difficult is, it's easier in one way because you have less things to worry about, but you have to keep on top of it. Because before you know it, you know, you could take your earrings out and dump them in one place, and then take off your watch and put it somewhere else. And oh, you just got a piece of paper for your shopping list. Oh, you'll just put that down. And before you know it, the space you have has become really cluttered with stuff you don't need. So I try and have a few little like junk dumping places. So if they're earrings or paper, they go in, and then I sort them out. And I've tried to explain to Indy, interestingly, because he said to me, oh, why do you want everything to be perfect and clean? I said, no, not at all, but we have to be organized. And I think a lot of it comes from, if you're organized with your stuff and you know where your things are, first of all, you'll realize probably how much you do have. You know, like it's been spoken about, we're rich. We don't realize we're in the top, like, few percent of the world's wealth. So what I find so interesting is, where I'm sitting here talking about simplicity, I've met people that have lived in corrugated tin houses with literally a rolling sleeping bag on the floor. That's what they own. That's where they live. You know, I've got twinkly lights, for goodness sake, you know, and hearts that are hanging, like, that's wealth. So I think we need to look at it through different eyes of what actually being, you know, what living simplest in a simple way is.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's all of that is just so, it's so helpful to sort of hear it from someone who's doing it, you know, and sort of you've had to go through that process. And do you feel that it's affected your time, or your use of time, or the amount of time that you have at all?
Yes, I mean, it changed my use of time. I think that's the best way to use it. It changed it at first, where I spent a lot of time worrying about all the things I had, or feeling like I had endless amounts of cleaning to do, or that cupboard I had to sort out with all these really cool art things for Indy to do, or, you know, the box under the stairs. There's less for me to now be concerned about. But I have to use a little bit of my time carefully. So with, you know, keeping up each day, doing a little bit each day, but it has freed up so much time. And I don't even mean physical time. It's freed up mental space. So the time that you'd be worrying about stuff, or, you know, sitting having a cup of tea and you're looking at that cupboard and thinking, oh gosh, I need to go and clean that. No, I don't look at the cupboard, but I need to go and clean the cupboard. When your mind's a bit clearer, you can sit there and practice gratitude, or practice some solitude and silence, or think, oh, I feel like praying. I want to spend some time alone with God. Mental time and mental space in such an intense world that we live in is, I think, worth its weight in gold. So that, time wise, you know, that's the thing that is most precious. I think
that's great. And that's so, because I think that's something that we all would long for, isn't it? And I know that, you know, I have moments where I look around the house and I'm like, there just isn't anywhere to put everything, and then I have to go, it's because we have too much stuff. I need to be moving things on, so that I'm not all the time looking around going, oh, I need to put that away, I need to put that away, I need to put that away. And I think that's, you know, that is what the point that you make is really, really precious, isn't it? That actually our heart wants to sit and chat to God, or spend time with him, or, you know, just enjoy, you know, all of that. And yeah, our minds can be frantic with need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that. And to take care of all your strategizing about other things that you need and when you can get them, or what you get first, and all of those things. So
I think we spend more time thinking about it sometimes than we actually do doing it, right?
Yeah.
Strategizing, planning, catastrophizing, and they were like, oh, and then doing it takes so much less time.
Yeah. So just one, I just wanted to go back to one thing, because I think, so I've been doing a bit of trying to simplify things in our house, and I sold our little play kitchen that we've had for a few years on Facebook the other day, because the kids have kind of outgrown it, and I was like, right, well, we don't need to hang on to that, it's there, it's taking up space, I have to dust it, let's move it on. And so someone came and picked it up, which was great. And then I was sat there later that day looking at the gap. I'm thinking, oh, well, that looks a bit strange. What could I put there instead? Oh, we could get some storage in there. And then I was back on Facebook Marketplace, seeing what was going in hand, because that was, good for the world and better for the pocket and all those things. And I found this thing and I was like, oh, that might fit there, and all the rest of it. I was like, I'm just going to leave it for the moment because I'm impulse buying, and that's not good. And I came back later on, I was like, just don't need it. I just need to not. But my impulse was one thing out. Oh, let's fill the gap with something else. And I think that as much as we can simplify, and particularly when you're parents, you are constantly having to have a flow of things out of the door, because they grow, and you have got to have a flow of new clothes or books that are more appropriate, or toys that are more appropriate, or something else. But we have to flow out the other end. But how, when you're considering or thinking of something, like, how do we, John Mark Comer has this whole list in his book, doesn't he? Like, before you buy something, but that's a whole big long list, and it is really important not to impulse buy. I was glad that I didn't on Facebook the other day. But this whole thing of how we just stop the things flowing back in the house, I think is really interesting for me personally, because I think it's so easy to feel like, oh, we've got rid of all that stuff to the charity shop. Oh, that's great. There's a bit more space now. What can we put in there? But actually needing to kind of stop and step back and go, maybe I just need to be content with what I've got. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Be ruthless, literally, to be so ruthless. And I think what helped me is I've almost got now a mental kind of catalogue of what I own, because I can see all of it, first of all, in front of me. I think if you can actually take stock of what you have, and you'll look at it and go, oh my gosh, look at how much I own. No wonder I feel so stressed out. I'm worrying about, 20 pairs of trousers and 5 storage cabinets, and that needs fixing, and the drawer needs doing on that, and the screw needs fixing on this one, and those clothes need to be washed because I swear there's moths in my wardrobe, right? There's worries of all this stuff. I think if you can literally write a list, I know that might be quite hard, but of the stuff that you actually own, and then you can physically see what you have, and you can physically see on this list, oh my goodness, look at how much stuff I have. I think it's changing what we think, because it's all well and good saying, like you said, I've sold one thing, I can't have something else come back in. You may well have something that would fit perfectly there, up in, another room, tucked behind something, but you've just forgotten that you have it, which we do because it's so easy to do.
Put things in the loft, put things in the garage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, or upcycling stuff, which is such an amazing thing to do. Or even not upcycling it in a way of having to do all this painting and changing the handles. Just using something for a different function. You could have had it in one room as something, have it somewhere else as something else.
Yeah.
And I think taking stock of what we actually have. Like I make Indy do it regularly, and he's probably really not liking me very much for it right now. I'm not one of his favorite people for it, but I'm hoping it will instill in him a sense of understanding what he owns. And actually, by himself last week, he got a min bag, and he sorted out this unit he has that opens up as like a desk, and it has his books in, it has stuff underneath. He's like, there's just so much stuff. Look at all this stuff. It's just a mess, and then things falling out. And it was such a perfect representation of what we feel as grown-ups inside, but we can't say because we're grown-ups, and we can't say those things. He was just exploring that how he felt, that I don't want to be doing this. This is my Saturday. Why am I here cleaning up all this stuff? If I just didn't have all of it, I wouldn't have it to worry about in the first place. Yeah. And he gave away one of his toys to a little boy who was playing with outside, because he realized in this process of tidying, I have a real guitar and a toy guitar. Why do I need a toy guitar for? It's just something else to look after, and it's in the way. I'm going to go and give it to someone and bless them with that instead. So I think the advice I would give is just literally take stock of what you have. If you actually sat down before you threw anything away or you did any piles, if you sat down and actually went through what you have, it in itself will just really shift your mindset onto we have so much rather than we can't get rid of anything. It will just change the way you're looking at it, I think.
I love that. That's great. Thank you. So just as we close, John Mark Comer takes us to this point where we're looking at the book of Philippians, where Paul writes, and he says this, he says, I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And I guess that's the thing that we're kind of seeking here, is not to not have any stuff. We're not saying don't have any stuff. We're not saying you have to get rid of everything, but we're saying where it bogs us down and where it feeds this insatiable desire for more, God is calling us to a place of contentment. And I love that, you know, that thought of just saying, you know, actually stop and take stock of what you've got. Like, go and look in your storage spaces, go and look in and say, do you know what, I have so much, and if you're not using it and you're not content to have it, then yeah, give it away, pass it on, sell it, whatever. But actually, that what we're seeking is a contentment that comes from Jesus and comes from walking with him. But the amount of stuff that we have can sometimes kind of get in the way of that, can't it? Because we are just so caught up with the culture's thing of us needing to have more and more all the time. So I love that, and I just love, thank you, Laura, so much for your testimony of, you know, that this place of kind of learning to be content that you have had to go on this journey, but the, you know, the kind of testimony that you can give to how that's just giving you space to be with Jesus and, you know, change the way that, you know, you use your time and things. And I just think that's so helpful to us to hear, you know, your experience. So thank you so much for sharing. And if you are joining us for the first time today and you're interested in more of this journey, please look on our website and you can see all the other talks that we are doing, going back all the way to the beginning of the book. And going forward next week, we'll be looking at another aspect of simplicity, and we hope that you'll join us then. Bye-bye.
Bye.